The art world, where paintings change hands for fortunes.
Selling at $95 million.
But for every known masterpiece, there may be another still waiting to be discovered.
Well, that's it.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
That is it. That is our painting.
International art dealer Philip Mould and I have teamed up to hunt for lost works by great artists. We use old-fashioned detective work and state-of-the-art science to get to the truth.
Science can enable us to see beyond the human eye.
Isn't that incredible?
The problem is, not every painting is quite what it seems.
I paid about £100,000 for it.
That is a lot if it's a fake.
It's a journey that can end in joy
Isn't that great?
That's wonderful.
or bitter disappointment. They are declaring that your painting be seized and then destroyed. In this episode, we're investigating two paintings by two giants of the 20th century. Sir Alfred Munnings, once Britain's most expensive living artist.
He's sublime.
And Sir Winston Churchill, a political colossus with a private passion for painting.
He never went anywhere when he was travelling without his paints.
Proving they are genuine is vital for an owner who must raise funds to stop his late uncle's farm being sold off.
I want to do my best to keep his memory going as much as I can.
But it won't be easy. Munnings has been faked by some of the most notorious forgers. While the potential Churchill threatens to divide opinion.
I find that worrying.
It's double or quits with £250,000 at stake. But will it all end in tears?
Blimey, what a journey.
Oh, you're going to make me cry now.
Philip and I have been summoned to the heart of London's legal district to look into the complex case of an artistic inheritance.
So we're on our way to the Old Bailey, where over the years I've spent many long days trying to interview people as they emerge from high-profile court cases. But I've never come here to talk about art.
I rather like it when art's on trial, particularly when the stakes are high.
We've come to see two paintings owned by Charles Henty, the under-sheriff of the Old Bailey. It's his job to manage the smooth running of Britain's busiest criminal court.
Charles, hello. Fiona, hi. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hello, Charles.
All right, nice to see you too.
Before this, he had a military career as a major serving in Northern Ireland and the Gulf. Throughout his travels, Charles has always carried with him a certain painting, and it hangs proudly in his office today. Although unsigned, family legend has always held that it was painted by one of Charles's heroes, Britain's wartime leader, Sir Winston Churchill.
At the house in London where we lived and I grew up in the early 60s, the story goes that three paintings were found in the coal hole.
With the coal? I mean, or was it used as a storage space? They were in there with filthy with the coal.
My father found one that was actually signed by Winston Churchill.
And what happened to the other two?
He's got one, and the one that was signed by Winston Churchill was, I think, returned to a member of the Churchill family.
Could Charles's father really have stumbled across a genuine work by Winston Churchill languishing in the coal dust?
So how did it come into your possession?
I'd left school, I was at home. I needed something to put on the wall, and it was down in the cloakroom, unframed. And I spoke to my father and I said, look, you're not using this picture, can I have it? And he said, sure. I took it into the greenhouse, put a couple of nails in the back and a bit of garden twine, and whacked it up on my garret room at home.
I'm slightly wincing at the, if it is by Winston Churchill, the whacking of the nails and the garden twine, but anyway.
I just stuck it up, so I had nothing on the wall.
Although Sir Winston Churchill is best known as a statesman, he was a keen amateur artist in his spare time. He painted for pleasure and as a refuge from the pressures of life, and mostly scenes of places he visited on holiday, from North Africa to the south of France. So is Charles's picture a location he is known to have painted?
Do you know where it's supposed to be?
Fez was what I was.
Yes, that's certainly what we were told.
That's what I thought it was.
Met you and saw the picture.
But I've been fairly deaf, increasingly over the years. Somebody's been saying of late whether or not it might have been in SE.
Could this be the city of Fez in Morocco or the town of Ez in the south of France? Finding the location might just help us prove that the picture is authentic. Even as an amateur painter, Churchill's works now command top prices. And this engaging scene could be worth as much as £200,000, which could be important for owner Charles.
If it turns out to be something rather valuable, then it might help me out a little bit.
Help you out?
My uncle died not that long ago, and I had to look after his affairs. I am now in a position where I have to settle some bills in terms of inheritance.
So you've inherited what property from him?
I have, yeah. 2 small farms over in France, and I've now got to settle the estate in order to keep it going.
And you must have been close to him if he left it to you.
We were, yeah, very close. I think I was very much the son that he never had.
Right.
Charles is determined to try and keep his beloved uncle's farm in France going and the livelihoods of those who depend on it. But without new funds, he'll have to sell to pay the crippling inheritance tax bill. If the Churchill is genuine, he has a chance. But he'll also need to part with the painting his uncle left him, a landscape believed to be by the celebrated 20th century British artist Sir Alfred Munnings.
It's, I believe, a Munnings, partly because
It's signed Munnings.
signed. My uncle was particularly keen on churches, and all of his life he studied churches.
And actually, depending on what approach you take to this picture, you could actually just say it's a portrait of a church.
Exactly, yeah.
Did he never tell you how he came by it? Or
I think he bought it. I think he bought it in the early 70s.
Munnings is best remembered as a painter of horses, often capturing the thrill of the races or a wealthy patron's beloved steed. In his lifetime, he had the distinction of being the most expensive British artist ever and became president of the Royal Academy of Art in 1944. If this pastoral scene is by Munnings, it could be worth around £50,000.
So the same uncle who has left you the farms and now, as a result, a very big tax bill, has left you this. Do you feel some emotional attachment to it, or would you, if you could prove it was by Munnings, sell it in order to relieve the debt a bit?
Yes, because it would go to some good use. I want to do my best to keep his memory going as much as I can. And this picture, though, I could part with if I could keep that operation going.
And keep the people working on the farm.
Keep the people working on the farm. And keep his memory down there, if you like. And I said that at his funeral, that, you know, we are going to do whatever we possibly can.
So it sounds like this inheritance tax bill has been preying heavily on your mind.
It has, and every single day, every single night, I'm either working on it but thinking about it all the time.
Well, are we talking hundreds of thousands?
Sadly, yes.
So a sizable bill.
A sizable bill, and the clock's ticking.
Together, the 2 pictures would solve Charles's financial woes at a stroke, if they are authentic. I'm keen to take a closer look at the pictures, but I've got a bit of a checkered past with the works of Sir Alfred Munnings. My first experience as an art dealer was getting hold of what I thought was 3 or 4 Munningses, putting them in the back of a car and driving them up in the snow, as it happened, to London from Norwich, only to be told when I arrived at a gallery there that they were fakes. Now, is this by Munnings? Looking up close, there's some rather wonderful brushstrokes. I mean, look particularly at the way what looks like a willow tree next to the water. It's the sort of thing you would expect growing there. And it's done with a very broad, probably hog hair brush. You can almost hear the sound of the brush on the board. But it's just done with like 1 or 2 strokes. And one of the characteristics is his great use of colour. He was a bold colourist. And here we have a problem, because there are so few colours in this picture. Now over to the other painting. It's not signed, but could it be by Churchill? We're not setting this by the high bar of the great post-impressionist painters around in the 20th century. I mean, Churchill was a spirited, formidably good amateur painter.
I like the blending of those yellows, those slightly violet tones, and the blues. You know, you get a feeling for a hot afternoon. The figures, well, the figures, to tell you the truth, are slightly weak. But they're bold and, dare I say it, they're plucky. But is it by Churchill? If we're going to rebaptise a work by Churchill, you know, the colossus of the 20th century, we need hard evidence.
I'm searching for clues, anything that can prove that Churchill connection to the picture. And I've just received a letter from Charles's father, Jonathan Henty. Now a frail 81-year-old, he's tried to write down everything he can recall about the discovery of the picture when the family bought a house in Ebury Street, West London, in 1963. We bought 186 Ebury Street in the early 1960s. The vendors were Mr. and Mrs. Ackroyd. When they left, Mrs. Ackroyd told me that Mrs. Beecham, née Churchill, now that's Sarah Churchill, Winston Churchill's daughter, Mrs. Beecham had left some discarded canvases, which the Ackroyds did not claim, and they were in the coal hole. This is promising. Our research confirms that 186 Ebury Street had indeed been home to Churchill's daughter Sarah and her second husband, the photographer Anthony Beecham, in the early 50s. Although Winston and Clementine Churchill disapproved of Sarah's marriage, they bought the house so the couple would have somewhere to live in London. Might it also have been furnished with paintings by Churchill himself that ended up, for reasons unknown, in the coal hole? As Jonathan Henty recalls, his first instinct was to see if Sarah Churchill wanted them back. There were 3 pictures, here we go. One of the Seine at Bougival, which clearly bore the signature of Winston S. Churchill. I got in touch with Sarah. She took the pictures away to show her mother. Hang on, this is interesting, which she did. According to Sarah, Lady Spencer Churchill, that's Clemmy, Churchill's devoted wife, Lady Spencer Churchill said the picture of Bougival was completely genuine. The second picture was of Aise, not Fez, was of Aise, that's the south of France, which Churchill painted after lunch one day. Now that can only have come from the mouth of Clemmy Churchill, because she would have known that Churchill painted it after lunch. The third picture, which I have hanging in the drawing room here, was by Paul Mass. We agreed that I should keep the Mass and the picture of Aise, and Sarah had the signed Churchill. She immediately sold it at Sotheby's or Christie's for, I think, about £5,000. This is a brilliant bit of provenance. If Clemmy Churchill saw these 3 pictures, one of which now belongs to Charles, that is a direct connection to the great man.
The anecdotal evidence in support of the painting attributed to Churchill is tantalising, so we've asked Aviva Bernstock, a specialist in the scientific analysis of paintings at the Courtauld Institute of Art, to take a closer look. She and her assistant are taking infrared photographs of both our pictures, and they've already yielded fascinating results.
See that there's some pencil inscriptions on both the back of both pictures. One's on a wooden panel and the other one's on canvas. So we can look at the back with infrared and maybe enhance those inscriptions to see what they say.
The infrared image of the landscape attributed to Sir Alfred Munnings delivers a promising lead.
Here upside down on the frame we can see something. We can actually look at the inverted image. Let's say it's on the frame itself.
Malton Gallery.
And what are we seeing here? So it says Dedham Winter.
That reference to Dedham is very encouraging. It's a village on the Suffolk-Essex border that Munnings called home. Armed with some fresh leads from Aviva's photos, we're getting together with our specialist researcher, Dr. Bendor Grosvenor.
We've got some high-resolution photographs here from the Courtauld Institute of the back of our pictures, and they yield a couple of rather interesting clues. Should we start with the Churchill picture?
Yeah, let's take a look at the back of this one, because there's some interesting writing on here, which appears to tally with what Charles is telling us. So Lady Audley, now that is Sarah Churchill, Lady Audley, courtesy of her 3rd marriage in 1962, and here she is. She's quite a character, 3 marriages, she was an actress. This here, I'm wondering if this is a phone number.
Yes, we ought to look into it.
If it is right, coming from the family, the coal hole, the market likes a bit of romance like that. I can see it doing really well.
Should we have a look at the back of the Munnings? If we look at the top of the stretcher bar, written in pencil, you could make out Maltson Gallery. That refers to an art dealer who was working in London in the 60s and 70s called Imre von Maltson, and he in fact sold the Munnings to Charles Henty's uncle, Christian, in 1968.
So he's a good lead. I'd certainly like to talk to him.
Retired art dealer Imre von Maltson was easy to track down. A longtime friend of the Henty family, it was Imre who originally spotted Dedham Winter in a London gallery in the late 60s, and then sold it to Charles's late uncle, Christian. I want to know if he remembers the sale after all these years, and if he'd ever seen any proof it was genuine.
I happened to see the Munnings in the Rutland Gallery, and I rated it very highly. I thought it was an extremely good picture and would fit into Christian's collection.
And when you bought it from the Rutland Gallery, what did they tell you or give you in connection with that Munnings painting that made you feel it was genuine?
Nothing at all. A lot of dealings at that time were on trust. I saw that it was a good painting. As far as I was concerned, it was Munnings.
Do you remember how much you paid for it?
Well, let me say I've sold it for £980.
Imre's belief in Dedham Winter is reassuring, but the Provenance trail is frustratingly cold. There is, though, a curious twist when it comes to our other painting, believed to be by Winston Churchill. Because Imre von Maltson clearly recalls Jonathan Henty bringing him all 3 paintings discovered in that coal hole in Ebury Street.
I took them away and had them cleaned professionally, and the story continued.
Do you know if there was any effort to authenticate them beyond the fact that they'd come from the coal hole?
You know, you don't argue with Winston's daughter.
Sure, that's about as good a provenance as you're going to get.
Absolutely.
Hearing Imre corroborate the incredible story of the paintings in the coal hole is heartening. But he was operating at a time when paintings were bought and sold on a good word and a handshake. Without any firm documentation in support of either picture, stylistic evidence is going to play a key role in the process of authentication. But how far does Charles's painting attributed to Churchill resemble other genuine works? To find out, we've come to Chartwell in Kent, Churchill's family home, where most of his pictures are kept. In Churchill's studio, we've arranged to meet David Coombs, the author of the official catalogue of the great man's work. Major auction houses defer to his judgment on the authenticity of Churchill's pictures, so his view on Charles's painting will be critical.
David, would he have had as many paintings as this up when he was working here?
Fiona, I think more, because we've only got a kind of sample here.
He wrestled with so many different things, still lives, landscapes.
Yes, that's true.
Portraits.
They succeed, I think, because they are painted straight. There's no fiddling.
These appear to be almost like a diary of his life. They seem to document what he's doing, where he's going.
That's true. These are traveller's paintings.
One thing I've noticed immediately is the emphasis on light.
Absolutely.
And also the way brickwork
Yes.
and stone and sand and earth absorb the light. Looking around, I have to say I'm convinced that there are similarities between Churchill's work and Charles's picture. But does David agree?
We think it's the south of France, possibly Aires.
Yeah, okay.
There's no signature.
We were a bit concerned with the lack of signature, but the lack of signature seems to almost be a signature.
You're right. There are occasions when he had a sort of session of signature doing, but put that aside. I'm puzzled by that. I find that worrying. The figures in particular are almost too good to be by him.
I mean, don't forget, this is obviously a photograph, so the colouring is not going to represent.
Even that. I wouldn't want to say anything without seeing the painting. It's only then could I feel I could give an opinion, really.
David's cautious reaction is both surprising and disappointing. Even on first glance, he has serious reservations about Charles's picture.
So if we were to convince you that this painting is by Churchill, what information do we need to give you?
Firm documentation of where it was painted, when it was painted, and the subject. We also need to have firm evidence of this passage of history from the brush of Churchill himself to the last owner. And that's it. And it's got to look like Churchill.
With David Coombs expressing concerns about the way the picture looks, finding evidence to support the provenance and that connection to Sarah Churchill is more important than ever. Charles's father, Jonathan, thinks he may have spoken to Sarah Churchill about the paintings on the phone, and Bendor thinks the pencil inscription on the back of the picture could bear that out.
On the back of our Churchill painting, there is in fact a telephone number written, and it says Lady Audley, Bell 1458. Now, Bell is a telephone code for Belgravia. Telephone numbers used to be a little area prefix and then 4 numbers. What that tells us is that we have a time window for when this conversation probably took place. Sarah Churchill became Lady Audley in April 1962. The way of writing telephone numbers stopped in 1968. Somebody thought that this picture had a connection to Lady Audley between April 1962 and 1968.
The presence of Sarah Churchill's official title on the back of Charles's painting might help prove that it belonged to her. But how can we be sure that her father painted it? I've arranged to meet Minnie Churchill, Winston's granddaughter by marriage. She worked with David Coombs on his official catalogue of Churchill's paintings. I'm hoping she might remember something from the family history that could help us work out where and when it was painted.
What did painting mean to Sir Winston?
Painting became an immensely important part of his life from 1915 onwards. He never went anywhere when he was travelling without his paints.
And when he travelled, I mean, the south of France is somewhere we're particularly interested in terms of relating it to our painting. He would stay with friends. I mean, it was quite a social scene, I think.
Well, he had a few friends that he stayed with down there, beautiful houses. We had a very interesting trip 2 years ago to find some of the places where he painted.
Did you go to Aix?
We did go to Aix, yes, and he painted a little chapel there. Very pretty little chapel.
Now this is good news. Just as Charles's father said, Churchill did visit the town of Aix to paint. Could our picture depict another local landmark from that same visit? I'm keen to know what Minnie thinks.
Do you think this looks Churchillian?
I mean, the colour is very interesting of the walls. I've never seen him paint a picture with people in like that. There's all the little figures there. The colours are lovely, but somehow I'm not sure.
Oh.
There's so many things that aren't quite like his other paintings. On the whole, I wouldn't have looked at it and said, I think that's a Churchill.
Oh.
But maybe it is, you know. There might have been different periods in his painting life when he did paint like that, but I'm not very convinced by it.
With Minnie Churchill sharing some of David Coombs's doubts, I'm returning to the Old Bailey to meet up with owner Charles Henty. We've exhausted all the leads contained in his father's letter. Can he suggest any further lines of inquiry?
Hi Charles, how you doing?
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Right, let me update you.
Okay.
I met Minnie Churchill. What she did say that was very encouraging was that Churchill had been to Aix, which confirms
Yes.
what your father was saying.
Yeah.
Aix, not Fez.
Yeah.
Imre von Maltzan also confirmed your father's story. He remembers it very well, actually, and the painting's coming from Sarah Churchill.
Excellent.
But what we still haven't got is a direct link between Churchill and the coalhole. Is there no one else you can think of who is connected to this painting and your father? I don't know, an auction house, another dealer, other friends?
If my father doesn't know, I would have thought Imre would have known, most of all. They're much better in this than I am. I would be too young to remember in many ways myself, so I think you've done as best as you possibly can.
The provenance trail on the possible Churchill might have gone worryingly cold, but I'm hoping for better luck with Charles's other picture, Dedham Winter, believed to be the work of Sir Alfred Munnings. I've come to Castle House in Dedham, home to a collection of over 700 of his works, ranging from childhood sketches to the equestrian paintings that brought him fame and wealth. I've arranged to meet curators Marcia Whiting and Bill Tetheridge for a closer look at Munnings's work and to see if there are any parallels in Charles's painting.
This painting, my wife, my horse, myself, basically shows everything he loved in his life. The house, the horse, Violet, his wife, and he's holding a painting of the actual painting.
Nice witticism, that.
He painted Violet at least 3 times on a different horse each occasion, so it was a subject that he wanted to revisit.
If Munnings is one of those artists who became infatuated by a particular scene, could the church in Charles's picture be a subject to which he returned more than once?
This picture here, which reminds me so much, actually, compositionally, of the one we're looking at with the use of water, but just shows how this painter almost has a naturalist's love of landscape.
He would take a journey from Dedham to Newmarket, and these were the sort of scenes that he would see along the way.
This was an artist who was in love with the English landscape, and that bodes well for Charles's painting. And while I'm examining his works for any similarities to Dedham Winter, I come across something extraordinary.
Here in the hallway is our exact same composition. Clearly there are differences. It's a different time of year, isn't it? I mean, where there was snow and ice, there's now colour. Wildflowers, purple loosestrife, cow parsley. It's a different atmosphere. But the composition's the same.
This feels to me like a major breakthrough, and I'm keen to know what Munnings expert Bill now makes of Charles's picture.
Well, that is very much like the painting you've seen in the hall, with the barge, Dedham Church behind. What is missing in the midground are the willows. It seems to be done more or less from the same location over the other side of the river. Going by the size, it's done on board. It could be a study.
Even from a photograph, Bill thinks he can see evidence of the hand of Munnings in Charles's painting. It's an important vote of confidence in our bid to prove that it's an authentic work. Spending so much time in such concentrated company with Munnings, I'm really amazed by the quality of his art. Representational, not particularly abstract, but with a touch of impressionism thrown in. I mean, he's sublime. If Munnings did paint Charles's picture, it's likely he did so just a stone's throw from the house, and I'm taking to the water to try and find the exact spot. When he was a boy, the Stour was a busy working river with mills all along its banks. But I have a theory that he returned to this spot in later life, perhaps to mourn the passing of the old ways, symbolised in Charles's painting by those abandoned barges.
I think this has to be the spot. And you can just imagine Munnings sitting himself here, getting his paints, his pencils out. I mean, it's got all the elements. You've got that wonderful vertical, the church tower, pulling the rest of the composition together. I mean, it's classic England, isn't it? And you've got that lovely bit of water, great for reflection. I mean, it is picturesque. I mean, equally, there are things that would have infuriated Munnings. He'd have had something to say about that pylon.
Back in London, I'm eager to consult the Munnings expert whose opinion will be decisive when it comes to establishing the authenticity of Charles's picture. Lorian Peralta Ramos is an American-based scholar who has spent 25 years cataloguing the artist's work. Auction houses seek her opinion before putting any new Munnings picture on the market. I've contacted her online for her initial impressions.
Do you think that it has a chance of being a work by Munnings?
It could very well be. Obviously, the subject matter, you have Dedham Church in the background, so certainly the location is right. Munnings is known for his light and color, one could sort of say, oh, well, this isn't typical Munnings because it's monotonal and doesn't have the light and color.
Lorien won't be able to offer a firm judgment until she's studied a high-resolution image in minute detail. And she sounds a note of caution about the extent to which Munnings' works have been forged, even while the artist was alive.
Munnings actually in his own writings talked about the various Munnings he saw in shop windows that were not by him. And so he knew there were people who were signing his name. I think I can identify maybe 3 or 4 different hands.
So 3 or 4 different fakers?
Yes.
That's deeply worrying that there are 4 ghostly fakers out there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With no evidence to show where Charles's painting came from before it appeared in a London gallery in the 1960s, could there be a possibility that it's an audacious fake? Bendor has been doing some digging, and he's made an alarming connection between the scene in Dedham Winter and Tom Keating, a notorious forger unmasked in the 1970s.
Buried in the churchyard at the scene of our putative Munnings is Britain's most notorious faker of the 20th century, perhaps Tom Keating. Now, he claimed to have faked over 2,000 works by over 100 artists during his lifetime.
So are you telling me that Tom Keating is buried in the actual church portrayed in this painting?
Yes.
Great, isn't it? I mean, just when I thought we were doing so well. Well, I suppose that's something we're going to have to consider, isn't it?
It certainly is something we're going to have to consider, I should say so.
This is the first real doubt we've had about Dedham Winter. And I'm also more than a little anxious about Charles's other picture, attributed to Winston Churchill, which David Coombs has now arrived to examine in person.
My feelings are not much changed from when you showed it to me on the tablet. The colouring is not typical of him. These details here are concerning. They are...
The figures?
The figures, yes. He was a man who did not like painting figures, and when he did, it wasn't very successful. And these are kind of in between. They're in between, not very good and not very bad. In fact, they could be quite professional, I think. What it lacks is courage. And he paints in it, generally speaking, in a very kind of confident way, which I can't see much of that in this.
The fate of Charles's painting now hangs in the balance. David Coombs has serious misgivings, but I'm absolutely convinced that there is stylistic evidence in Churchill's other paintings that should change his mind.
Well, I think what we need to do is try and address his points one by one, because he has a number of concerns. First of all, the colours. He thinks the colours are not Churchillian.
Yeah, but I've been thinking about that. I mean, I'm afraid I disagree. I mean, what are the dominant tones and colours in our picture? Well, it's that sort of rather light ochre, that sandy colour that describes the stone, and also that rather emphatic strong blue. But we get it with other pictures. I mean, looking at, let's say, this picture here, also by Churchill, a view of North Africa. I mean, look at the very strong blue in the top, and then that sort of diluted mustardy tone for the stonework. I mean, I do very much feel that they're from the same palette.
Well, David Coombs' other concern was that the figures are too good.
I have to say, that's a real new one for us, isn't it? We're trying to prove that this is an authentic work by an artist by trying to work out, are the figures bad enough? Well, actually, I think they are.
Churchill seems to have got his hips in the wrong place with his figures. Certainly the woman at the trough is bending over rather awkwardly, isn't she?
And compare that to another picture we have here by Churchill, very distinctive, that sort of rather ungainly, arthritic pose.
I think the key to unlocking this Churchill is finding out where he painted it.
Sounds to me like you're volunteering to go to the south of France.
Well, I think it's a tough gig, but someone's got to do it. Our strongest lead for the location of the scene in Charles's painting is the village of Aires, just outside Nice in the south of France. Churchill is known to have painted here, but can we find the fountain in Charles's painting and connect it directly to Churchill himself? It might just be the crucial piece of evidence that sways David Coombs' opinion. So Charles and I have arrived in Aires, eager to start the search. So we find ourselves in Aires. Do you think we'll find the site of your painting there?
I jolly well hope so. It's got all the right hallmarks, it's very pretty, the colours are just super. it's got a good feel about it. So I'm pretty confident we're going to get very close. Going to get very close indeed.
Armed with a photo of our possible Churchill painting, Charles and I canvassed the locals to try and pinpoint the scene.
I wondered whether you could help me.
Je voulais vous demander, est-ce que vous reconnaissez cette vue-là, à Aise?
Ça ressemble pas du tout à Aise.
You think it is in Aise?
I do. I hope it is.
I don't think so.
After several hours of fruitless inquiries, it's clear Charles's painting wasn't done in Aise. It's a big disappointment. But we've been given a lifeline by one of the locals. They've suggested we speak to a man called Luc Tombeur, an artist who knows a lot about other artists who visited this region in the past. We've arranged to meet him in the nearby town of Vence.
Luc, we wanted to talk to you because Charles here has a painting which he hopes is by Winston Churchill.
Oops.
Yeah,
I hope.
Which would be quite significant, obviously. And Churchill came to the south of France to paint, amongst many other places.
Oh, I know he was there.
I've got an image of the painting, which I wanted to show you. We've been trying to find out where this was painted. I just wonder, do you recognise this at all?
This is the fountain of St. Paul.
It's the fountain of St. Paul? St. Paul de Vence?
Yeah, right. It's my home now. You know, this curve of the fountain is unique. Yeah, it's like 5 minutes from here, 10 minutes from here. There was a gallery next to it. The guy was named Lutenbacher. He died like 20 years ago, I think. He married a dancer, Joyce, her name.
Joyce?
Joyce, yeah?
Joyce.
But do you know if Joyce is still alive?
I really don't know. I can ask. We can ask in the village if somebody knows about this.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this would be good.
That'd be super. Thank you.
Up in the hills above Vence is the old town of Saint-Paul-de-Vence. If Luc is right, this is where we could find the fountain in Charles's painting. We might just be a few minutes away from a local landmark in a tiny French village that could help prove Charles's picture is genuine and help him keep his late uncle's farm going. Oh, hang on. That looks very familiar up there. Look, it's the right shape, just as Luc has said.
Oh, look.
You see? How brilliant. What we've got to do now is find the spots. Okay. We're right backed up in this corner. So that's the cut-off point. So there you've got the side of the fountain, the troughs there, the arch of that window there, the windows with the shutters, you see?
Yeah.
And the balcony there. Still got pot plants on. And the 3 steps.
My goodness.
So this is it. This is the spot right here. Oh, look at you!
It's quite something, isn't it?
Oh, you're going to make me cry now. Goodness. It's a big moment, isn't it?
It is.
And how long have you been looking at this picture?
Over 30 years. My God.
And
I
that's
didn't
it.
realise I'd feel like this, I have to say.
Well,
Blimey, what a journey.
what do you think your father would say?
Pull yourself together, boy.
Finding the fountain in the picture is a significant breakthrough. But back in England, I'm following up concerns about Charles's other painting, Dedham Winter. This picturesque church might have been painted by Sir Alfred Munnings, but it's also the final resting place of Tom Keating, a forger who put dread into the art world. Keating first hit the headlines in the early 1970s, when a series of unknown pictures by the 19th century watercolourist Samuel Palmer suddenly appeared on the market. Keating eventually confessed, claiming it was a protest against dealers who got rich at the expense of the artist, and he revelled in the attention that it brought to him.
Will you do a Palmer for us?
I'll try.
What will you do?
Whatever you ask me to do. It must have a moon, an umbrella, bats, and a touch of magic.
Keating is believed to have faked the work of countless artists, including Munnings, and claimed that over 2,000 of his forgeries were in circulation. Could Charles's painting be one of them? I've arranged to meet John Bradler, who knew Keating well, to try and shed some light on the late forger's secrets. So Tom Keating, established faker, what motivated him?
He was a frustrated artist. He was painting in his own style and not getting anywhere. To prove that he was as good as some of his heroes, Samuel Palmer being one of them, he started painting paintings in the style of Samuel Palmer. Then he took it one stage further and actually started faking them so they would pass off as Samuel Palmer's. I mean, he wouldn't do the Mona Lisa, he wouldn't do Gainsborough's Blue Boy, he wouldn't do paintings that everybody knew everything about. He would do the missing link, he would do the study for something. So if Keating had done your painting, it wouldn't be an obvious one.
John, you haven't seen this yet, but I want to show you this picture, and I want you to give me your first responses as to whether this could be by your favourite rogue.
Could be. Could easily be. Could easily be.
What makes you think that?
Just the colouring.
But look at the trees. I mean, I think they're done enormously well, very swiftly. And the foreground foliage done so deftly.
He knew painters' techniques. He'd have gone into the Munnings Museum and looked at them. So, why not?
Is there a way of telling?
He is alleged to have put fake under some of his paintings.
Which would come up with X-ray?
Which would come up with X-ray.
It's vital that we now try and rule out Tom Keating's involvement in Dedham Winter. So we're sending the picture back to the Courtauld Institute to be X-rayed. We want to make sure there's no message for us from the faker underneath the paint layers.
While Philip waits for the results of the X-ray, back in France, Charles and I are meeting up again with local artist Luc Tombeur.
I didn't expect to see you in this circumstance.
He's managed to track down Joy Lutenbacher, the woman whose late husband ran an art gallery right beside the fountain for over 40 years. If someone as famous as Sir Winston Churchill had stopped to paint in the town, there's a chance Joy might have heard about it. Can I show you the picture? Here it is. This is an image of it. Your gallery was just next to it.
This was over here.
Oui.
Do you remember Winston Churchill ever coming to St
I never met
Paul's?
Winston Churchill, but my aunt did. My aunt had a tea room in St Paul. My husband, who was a painter, he used to go to, because all the intellectuals and painters, the artists, they all met in John's tea room. And one day he saw Churchill painting outside the fountain, and Churchill had run out of paint, and my husband had got a few old tubes left, and he said to Churchill, "Can I help you? I can give you some of my ends of tubes." How do you say? Wood tube. And Churchill was very pleased, so they had a good chat about their painting and the tube, the paint and all this, and he gave Arthur in exchange his cigars. His famous cigars.
So your husband saw Churchill?
Saw him painting.
Painting?
Yes. With no
certainly this view. And then lent him some of the paints to do the picture?
That was all my husband told me. Because the cigars amused him, because he was very fond of cigars.
And I assume your husband smoked the cigars. He didn't keep them. You don't still have
No,
them.
he smoked more.
He smoked them, yeah, okay.
He was very fond of cigars.
Yeah, I bet he did. Joy's account of her husband's meeting with Churchill the artist, which she thinks could have happened in 1945, gives us remarkable first-hand testimony in favour of Charles's painting. And it might even help explain the choice of colours in the picture that David Coombs was so concerned about. Churchill ran out of his usual pigments and instead used replacements provided by Joy's husband. But at the moment, all we have is Joy's word. So back in the UK, Bendor has been trying to corroborate Churchill's link to Saint-Paul de Vence.
Got here an old BBC newsreel from 1949. It's all about Saint-Paul de Vence and its popularity with artists. I'm not expecting to see a clip of Churchill painting our picture, but you never know what we might find.
The art shop of an English lady, Miss John Smith, is very famous. She came for a short visit 25 years ago, but loved it so much that she never left.
This is Joy Luttenbacher's aunt, Joan Smith, whose shop is in the Place de la Fontaine. Lovely to see a picture of her in her shop. And here, I don't know who this painter is, but he looks like a pro. The position that he has chosen seems like a slightly stronger perspective of the fountain. It's interesting that David Coombs thought that our picture showed a rather weak composition. An amateur like Churchill perhaps just found a nice spot and didn't quite think out how the composition was going to look. The one we have here in this shot looks like a slightly nicer view of the fountain.
And this fountain all artists paint now, especially since Mr. Churchill painted it when he visited St. Paul a little while ago.
I can't believe I just heard that. That's fantastic. That's contemporary, incontrovertible proof that Churchill painted this scene. And a little while ago, this film is made in 1949, so that would fit with our putative date of 1945. A little while ago, I suppose it must refer to after the war and some few years before. That's fantastic. That absolutely corroborates Joy Luttenbacher's story that Churchill was painting this shortly after the war. Amazing.
We've made real progress with the painting Charles believes to be by Churchill, placing the great man at the scene and behind his easel in the late 1940s. But we'll need to be even more precise to convincingly answer David Coombs's question about when it was painted.
The fate of Charles's other picture, Dedham Winter, is equally finely balanced. With the ghost of forger Tom Keating hovering over proceedings, I've been summoned back to Castle House in Dedham by curator Bill Tetheridge. He's been trawling through the many hundreds of works by Sir Alfred Munnings that they hold in storage, and he says he has a surprise in store for me.
Aha, an array of pictures. Hang on, they're all the same scene.
Exactly.
This is extraordinary. Here is the same scene repeated over a dozen times. The view of Dedham and the River Stour clearly had profound significance for Munnings, because he returned to paint it again and again. 2 or 3 of these pictures are also painted on board, just like Charles's. There's even another unfinished winter scene that could actually be a related study to Charles's painting.
It's almost as if he's in love with the scene, and he's preoccupied by it.
He went out and he was getting £500 a commission for painting a horse and rider, which is an enormous amount of money during the 20s and 30s. But all he wanted to do was sit on a riverbank and paint pictures like this.
The emotional connection that Bill picks up between all these pictures bodes well for Charles's painting. And to my eye, Dedham Winter instinctively feels like part of this family rather than a forger's handiwork. But will the X-ray bear this out? With Fiona now back from France, we're getting together to examine the image taken by Aviva Bernstock from the Courtauld Institute.
I've got the results of the X-ray of the Munnings here, and I have to say I can't see any message from Tom Keating.
No message from beyond the grave?
No.
And I think even more significantly, having got to see now so many Munningses and got close to them, I think our picture has the characteristics of the artist.
It's at Munnings, isn't it?
Let's hope you're right.
If Munnings expert Lorien Peralta Ramos agrees that the picture is authentic, it could raise vital funds for Charles. But it's the possible Churchill painting that is potentially the game changer for Charles's financial problems.
There is a lot at stake for him, because this is a family story that has come down the generations, the paintings, the coalhole from the Churchill family. And then there's this farm in Normandy. He wants to keep that not only as a memory of his uncle, of whom he was clearly tremendously fond, but also people's livelihoods depend on it.
Bendor has just received an incredible piece of evidence that might boost Charles's chances of keeping his uncle's farm together. It reveals exactly when the picture was likely to have been painted. Joy Lutenbacher has discovered a signed photograph that Winston Churchill gave to her Aunt Joan when he visited her tea room in Saint-Paul-de-Vence on the last days of a painting holiday spent in France. It's dated October the 1st, 1945.
I've been looking into the dates and locations of Churchill's painting holiday in 1945 after his election defeat. And David Coombs's Churchill painting book states that he started his holiday in Italy and then he went to France, where he revisited pre-war haunts at Monte Carlo and Antibes. Now that all would appear to fit in with what Fiona found out in France. But the historian in me always likes to back things up with a few primary sources. I did manage to find a reference in the Times newspaper, in fact, a story that refers to Mr. Churchill's sore throat. It was announced yesterday that Mr. Churchill is confined to his house with a sore throat and will not be able to attend Parliament this week. Then it concludes, Mr. Churchill, who will be 71 next month, returned to this country on October the 5th after spending a holiday in the south of France. So I'm very happy with all the dates and what we found.
So we now know that Churchill paid a visit to Saint-Paul-de-Vence and painted the fountain there in October 1945. But can we be sure that Charles's picture is the one that he did while he sat in that square using borrowed paints? The colours that David Coombs found uncharacteristic could also be partly explained another way. At the Courtauld Institute, Aviva Bernstock has been examining the picture under ultraviolet light and can detect a wax coating, likely to have been applied in the 1960s after the painting was removed from the coalhole and cleaned.
You can actually see the waxy coating and the grey particles embedded in it of surface dirt very clearly. If the waxy coating and the dust was removed, I'm pretty sure that the tonality of the picture would be much brighter and more contrasting.
If we can return the painting to its original colouring, it might make it easier to see what I now believe is clear evidence of Churchill's hand. So Simon Gillespie, a specialist restorer, is painstakingly removing that layer of wax. The results are noticeable. The colours are crisper, the shapes clearer. Has this got us a little closer to the artistic courage that David Coombs felt it lacked?
It's Judgment Day back at the Old Bailey, where our journey first began. David Coombs has examined the newly cleaned picture attributed to Churchill and mulled over all our evidence. Over in America, Lorian Peralta Ramos has completed her examination of Dedham Winter, believed to be by Sir Alfred Munnings. Both have now delivered their verdicts in writing. And we're all about to learn them for the first time. Understandably, owner Charles Henty is on tenterhooks.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, Charles.
You ready for this?
As ready now as I'll ever be, yes. Okay.
And it's probably now worth reminding ourselves what these pictures are worth if they are both proved to be right. If this can be proved to be by Winston Churchill, it's worth in excess of £200,000. And Munnings, I would say probably up to £50,000.
If this isn't by Churchill, we're not looking at 200,000, we're looking at 200 probably, aren't we, or something?
I'm afraid as an amateur work of Vence, yeah, a couple of £100.
Yep.
I have in my hand here the envelope which contains the responses of Bill and Lorian on your Munnings. Well, the one from Lorian is very long. Dear Sirs, I've inspected the oil painting titled Dedham Winter Landscape. In my opinion, this work is consistent with Munnings' work and therefore will be included in the forthcoming catalogue raisonné of Sir Alfred Munnings. And added to that, we have a message from Bill from Castle House. Having been able to study, compare and contrast all of Munnings' studies and finished pieces, I feel that in all probability it was painted by Sir Alfred Munnings. Congratulations.
Great. Well done.
Thank you very much indeed. Goodness me. One down, one to go.
This is the big one. If we've done enough to prove the Churchill is genuine, Charles can raise the funds he needs to maintain his late uncle's farm in Normandy.
OK, you ready for the Churchill?
Better be.
So this is from David Coombs. She starts, from the outset, as you know, I have had doubts about the likely authenticity of this painting. Since then, I've seen the painting newly cleaned. Nonetheless, this painting, while it is not, in my opinion, by Winston Churchill, is undoubtedly very intriguing, a genuine puzzle, and as such would be a candidate for being added in a future edition of my catalogue to the section of pictures already included there as a mystery. She's not completely writing it off, is he?
He's hedging his bets a wee bit.
He's giving himself a bit of wiggle room there. Not by Churchill, but nonetheless it's going to be in his catalogue as a mystery. So it's not the answer we want, but it's not an absolute rejection either.
No, I think it's a suspended sentence.
Well, I should go for an appeal.
What about the farm in Normandy?
Well, without doubt, we'll have to sell half of it in order to raise sufficient monies, we hope. There's no doubt now that this is not yet proven to be a Churchill. Plan B is to do that.
It's a bitter blow for Charles Henty, and the repercussions will be felt in France. He can only hope that a new piece of evidence might one day emerge to prove that the painting discovered in that coal hole in Ebury Street was indeed painted by Sir Winston Churchill.
For me, this investigation isn't quite over.
And one day, and I've seen pictures do this, one day it might well make it. So you could say that Churchill lives to fight another day.
So watch this space.
If you think you've got an undiscovered masterpiece, we'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at bbc.co.uk/fakeorfortune.
Our gripping brand new drama from the Queen of Crime, Agatha Christie, stars David Walliams and Jessica Raine, who are thrust into a world of international espionage. Partners in Crime begins next here on BBC One. And over on BBC Three now, a disastrously hilarious case of getting to know you in the comedy sequel, Meet the Fockers.